I want to speak for one more week on Easter. Often when a holiday is over, we move on pretty quick. Christmas becomes Boxing Day far too fast. We clean up the wrapping paper and we emotionally move on. Some people take down their Christmas decorations on Boxing Day. They've been up long enough. Well, Easter is the pivotal event in God's plan for humanity. Everything in the Old Testament points to Easter, and everything in the New Testament and beyond springboards off Easter. Easter is more than just a religious holiday. It's not just remembering something that happened in history. It's the pivotal point in God's redemptive plan for humanity. So let's not move on too quick. In this sermon series, The Road to the Cross, we've spent our time exploring the idea of finding Jesus, discovering some of the roads he walked, some of the roads the disciples walked, and then answering the invitation to walk with Jesus. And it's the idea of walking on the journey of life. And the journey is something that I'm learning. I'm often a destination focused person, and the journey is a bit of a means to the end. When I used to go on road trips, there were only two acceptable stops: bathroom and getting gas. And hopefully we could do both in one stop. But I'm learning to enjoy the journey. And the same is true in my spiritual life. I'm learning that God is all about the journey. Jesus calls us to journey with him. Sometimes I think that spiritual maturity is actually the daily practice of journeying with God. And when we do, we discover two things. We discover who we are, engaging with the God who created us and who loves us and has a plan for our life, tells us who we are. And we also discover more and more of who he actually is. And that's a really good thing. So there's one more road that we want to walk on, one more road that we want to explore. And it's the story of a road that two disciples walked down. It's the story of the road to Emmaus. And that's a town that's about 7 miles from Jerusalem. Passover is over, it's wrapped up. The Sabbath is now over. And these two disciples are going back home. They're going back to their reality. It's the story of Easter, because Easter isn't over yet, both in this story and now. A lot was accomplished on Friday and on Saturday and on Sunday. And we might think that God is done, but God is just getting started. The entire plan of God, all the way from creation, gets squeezed down to this one singular event. That's the death of Jesus. And now the plan of God is bursting out into the world, and it still hasn't stopped. So let's take a look at this story. Well, it begins on a Monday, a proverbial Monday. Monday kind of gets a bad rap. It's a bad rap of the day of the week. Mondays are an interesting day. Let's be honest, it's kind of the worst day of the week. It's a day when reality kicks back in our daily lives and in our spiritual lives. It's the end of the weekend. And maybe we had a chance to go camping or a little holiday. Maybe we just had 2 days where we could sleep in. Well, spiritually, you've experienced a recreation in your life, a weekend of a life. You've been energized in your faith, but now it's Monday. It's a day of reality. It's a day when we leave that mountaintop experience and we journey back down the valley, back down into life. And it's not that Mondays are so bad. Mondays don't demand anything more of us than any other day of the week. It's just the timing of it. We still carry with us the hope of the weekend. Spiritually speaking, we still carry with us the hope and the expectation of Sunday. And now it's back to Monday. Monday has arrived, and all of the joy of the weekend, all of the joy of Easter is now less because we have to carry on. We all love to experience and handle the Easter weekends of our lives, when our faith is fresh, when God is alive. But how do we experience and handle the Mondays of our lives? Because for every Sunday, there comes a Monday. For every weekend, there is a weekday, a day of the return to reality, a day of more questions than answers, a day of putting faith into practice. Well, this translates into our spiritual lives. We understand the God of Sunday. We understand the God of resurrection and miracles and celebration, but He's also the God of Monday. He's the God of our everyday. And He's walking with us in our real lives, with all of our stresses and with all of our struggles. And He's revealing His plans to us and how we are a part of His plans. And through it all, He's calling to us. He's calling to us to come and follow Him. You know, too many people see God as only a God of Sunday, that if we can't access Him on Sunday, then He's inaccessible. And that works well if you're in the know, in the Christian culture, and you know what to do to access God on Sunday. But if you're out of the loop and you're standing on the sidelines and you feel that it's a lot harder to meet with God, that can be pretty frustrating. If you don't understand how the game is played, it's really hard to participate in it. So, for the person who questions Christianity, they feel that God is someone who is only accessible at a church on a Sunday morning through ritual, by saying the right things and doing the right things. Maybe you feel that way as an outsider looking in. Well, we're looking at this road that two disciples are walking on. It's the road to Emmaus. Easter is over, the resurrection has happened, but they really aren't sure how this affects them. They're going back to their lives in Emmaus. So Luke writes this. Now, that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jordan, so from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. It's an interesting story. Here are two members of this tiny little community of people that were following Jesus. One of them is named Clopas. In the Gospel of John, we read that one of the women at the cross was Mary, the wife of Clopas. She was present when Jesus was crucified. Most likely this couple, these two people on the road to Emmaus, were that husband and wife, Clopas and Mary. And they're trying to come to grips with what has happened. Actually, one of the words that Luke uses is that they're disputing with each other. There's conflict and there's tension because the Gospel of John records that Mary was present when Jesus died, but there's no record of Clopas being there. Maybe that's part of why there's tension. They're trying to figure out what has happened. So while they're doing that, a stranger comes up beside them. Luke has this intriguing phrase. He says that they were kept from recognizing him. Now, we, the readers, know exactly who it is, but they don't. They're in the dark. For some time, and we don't know how long, this stranger just walks next to them. Maybe they're so engrossed in the conversation that they don't even notice. But eventually, the stranger asks them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" Now, this is a question that stuns them, and it stops them in their tracks. Luke continues to write, "They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Clopas, asked him, 'Are you only a visitor to Jerusalem and do not know the things that have happened there in these days?'" Now, where would you rate this question on the politeness meter? Basically, he's asking, have you been living under a rock? Do you not pay attention to anything at all? The hugest thing that could have possibly ever happened in Jerusalem and in their lives just occurred this past weekend. And this stranger who is totally clueless of it. Now, Jesus is very polite, and he just says, "Oh, what things? Tell me. What things are you talking about?" And so they tell him. About Jesus of Nazareth. He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed, before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel.